Hi everyone, my name is T and welcome to my channel. I created this channel specifically to share some fundamental Excel knowledge and tricks I've picked up over the years as a consultant. Today, we'll be diving into VLOOKUP, a powerful but sometimes tricky function. I'll guide you through the basics while also sharing some best practices and hidden gems that will come in handy for your everyday Excel tasks. So, let's jump right in and get started with the fundamentals. Wizard input. Now let's go through the VLOOKUP function step by step. There are two ways to use the VLOOKUP. Either use a wizard to help you by pressing the Insert Function button in the formula bar, which can guide you through the formula setup. Or if you are familiar with the formula, you can also input the formula directly into the cell by double-clicking the cell or pressing the F2 button and start typing the VLOOKUP formula. This produces the exact same result and can be a real-time saver. Now let's start with using the Insert Function wizard, as it provides helpful prompts and explanations for each part of the formula. Before you start, you should ask yourself the following 3 questions. The first question is which cell the search key is located on the spreadsheet. The second question is where is the data set that you want Excel to look for the search key and return the corresponding value. And last but not least, where is the return value located in the dataset? In our example here, I am going to ask Excel to find the search key in the yellow shaded cell. And the table on the left is my dataset from customer ID all the way to email. The return value is located at the column D within the dataset. Remember what I have said at the start of the video? For the VLOOKUP function to work smoothly, the return value needs to be located on the right side of the search key. Taking a look at our current data set, if we use customer ID as the search key, the VLOOKUP function should work for the rest of the fields. Now you can start setting up the VLOOKUP function. First, you click on the cell where you want the extracted value to appear, and then go to the formulas bar and click the Insert Function button. And you can try to see if the VLOOKUP appears at the list here. If not, it is always easy to just type the VLOOKUP in the search box and click Go. You can now see the VLOOKUP appearing at the bottom as the search result. Double-click on it to bring up the wizard. Now you can see that there are 4 fields in total, and 3 of them are bolded, which means that they are the mandatory fields. So let's go through them one by one. The first one is lookup value. This is the cell where the search key is located. In our example here, it's the yellow shaded cell, which is the customer ID. Click the input area and select the yellow shaded cell. VLOOKUP also automatically updates the formula within the cell. If you find that the wizard is blocking you from selecting the cells, you can use the button on the right to minimize the wizard. After you have made the selection, you can use the same button to restore the wizard and continue to the next field. The second one is table array. This is the data set that you want Excel to search. It should contain the search key and the return value column. The search key should be the first column of the data set, and the selection has to be continuous, meaning that you cannot skip any columns in the middle. In our example, we're using the customer ID to find their corresponding address. The most intuitive way is to select the first 4 columns, which include the customer ID and the address. However, if you think you might need to use this VLOOKUP formula again later, it's actually a better practice to select the entire dataset. This might seem like extra work now, but it can save you a lot of time and effort down the road. Here's another thing to keep in mind. In this example, I've highlighted the exact size of the dataset. However, in real-world scenarios, datasets are often more dynamic. New records are frequently added, and data can change over time. We'll explore some best practices for handling dynamic dataset later in the video. But for now, let's focus on selecting the exact dataset we're working with. The third one is column index number. This tells Excel, with reference to the search key, which column in the table array contains the value you want to extract. In our example, the search key is customer ID. We then count to the right to locate the column that contains the return value, which is the address. We see that it is the fourth column counting from customer ID, hence we input this value in this field. This may not be too difficult when you are working with a small data set like the one that I am showing here, but it could be a little bit tricky if you are working with a big data set with a lot of columns. There is actually a little help from Excel that can help you with the counting. I don't know whether you have noticed that when I made the selection on the dataset for the second field, there is a little box that comes up right next to the cursor showing the number of rows and the number of columns in the current selection. The number next to the letter C when you drag the cursor to the column containing your return value is the input for the column index number, which in our example here is 4. So instead of doing the counting yourself, you can already get this useful information when you made the selection for the dataset in the second field. Now moving on to the fourth field, the range lookup. This is an optional field. This determines how exact the match needs to be. If you want Excel to only return the value when it finds the exact match, you have to choose false. This is also the standard choice for most cases, so let's stick to this for the time being. Great job on entering all the fields. But how do you know if the formula is giving you the expected result? Here's a handy tip. Excel can actually preview the outcome even before you confirm the formula, if the cell that you selected for the lookup value contain a valid search key. Excel will dynamically update the result in the wizard, giving you a quick glimpse of what to expect when you hit OK. As you can see here, the address of customer ID 5 is 123 Main Street, which is exactly what is showing here in the dataset. If this is what you expected, you can click OK to confirm the selection, and you can see that the result is showing in this cell. You can now update the customer ID in the orange cell, and you can see that the address cell will automatically update with the address of that customer ID. Remember, we have told Excel to return a value only when an exact match is fine. If you input a customer ID that doesn't exist in the current data set, like customer ID 30, Excel will return an error code telling you that it cannot locate the customer ID that you have input. All right. That covers using the VLOOKUP wizard to set things up. When you're comfortable with the formula and want to streamline the process, you can use direct cell input to speed up your VLOOKUP game. Direct formula input. Now let's try using the direct formula input for the VLOOKUP, which is more efficient if you are already familiar with the arguments that need to input for the formula. The first one is the same as what we did when we used the input function wizard. We select the cell where we want the return value to appear and press F2 to go into the edit mode. And just start typing $, and then VLOOKUP. Once you type the open bracket, the 4 arguments that you need to input will appear, which are exactly what we just saw when using the input wizard. The first argument is the lookup value, which is the location of the search key. This is going to be the yellow cell. Select it and type comma. The next one is the table array, which is the location of the dataset. Same as what we did before, we select the entire dataset and type comma. The third one is the location of the return value, so it is 4, and after that you type comma. The last one is range lookup. Just input false and type close bracket, and then enter. Then you are done with the input. So now you just have to go to the input cell and type the customer ID that you want to search. You can see that Excel will show the output value in the return value cell. So using direct input is a lot faster if you can remember all the arguments that you need to input. Formula application. So now I am going to show you how to use VLOOKUP directly in the calculation. Let's say now you want to do a promotion and give out to free cookies for every employee to selected customer. To save some time, we can take advantage of the formula we previously entered to locate the address. First, to ensure you copy the exact formula, it's important to switch to edit mode before copying it. Otherwise, Excel might adjust the cell references based on where you paste the formula. To enter the edit mode, first we double-click the cell or press F2. It will show the VLOOKUP formula that we have seen in the formula bar. Select the formula by holding the left button of the mouse. Right-click and select Copy from the drop-down menu. Now make sure you press the Escape button on the keyboard to avoid making any changes to the original formula. Now select the cell that you want to use for the calculation. Double-click it or press F2 to enter the edit mode. Now, right-click on the cell where you want to paste the formula. This will bring up a drop-down menu. When you move to the Paste option, Excel will highlight the reference cells based on the current formula. You can check to make sure it is correct before you click on the Paste button, and press Enter to confirm the action. As you can see, the result in this cell is identical to the one above. That's because we're using the same formula in both cells. In the next step, we'll need to modify the formula to change from the address to number of employees. This is because the number of employees is what we'll use to calculate the number of free cookies. We'll keep everything in the original formula the same, except for where the return value is located. You'll notice that the number of employees is now in the 5th column instead of the 4th when referencing the customer ID. So now you just need to double-click or press F2 to enter the edit mode. And then move to the third argument and replace the value, which is 4, with the new value 5, and press Enter to confirm the update. Now, let's edit the formula to include the actual calculation. Since we want to give out 2 cookies per employee, simply multiply the number of employees by 2 to get the total number of cookies needed. Again, double-click or press F2 to enter the edit mode. Go to the end of the formula and just type ×2 and press Enter. And you can now have the number of cookies automatically calculated based on the customer ID that you input. Best practice 1. Using absolute reference. First, you have to understand the difference between relative and absolute references. Every formula relies on cell references, like in the VLOOKUP function that you see here. You have got cell reference I3, which is the search value, and you have also got cell references A1 to G9, which are the data set. By default, Excel uses relative references. This means when you copy a formula with a relative reference to a new cell, Excel automatically adjusts the cell references to match the new location. Think of it like this: the references move with you. You can see the formula in the new location. All the cell references have changed and are different from the original formula. Notice how the copied formula lands 3 rows down from its original position. Because of relative references, all the cell references within the formula also adjust by 3 rows to match the new location. While relative references are useful in some cases, especially for lists, they can become tricky if you're unsure of the relative position between the new location and the original formula's cell. If you don't want the references to move with you when you copy the formula to the new cell, you can change the references within the formula to absolute references. First, double-click or press F2, then go to the cell reference you want to change. Simply press F4, and you can change the reference to absolute reference with a $sign in front of both the column reference, which is the letter I here, and the row reference, which is the number 3 here. You can press F repeatedly to cycle through the different option. The first one is what you see here with absolute references on column and row, which means that both column and row will remain as I3 no matter what. Press F again to go to the second option, the absolute row reference. which is having the $sign in front of the number 3. It means that the role reference will remain as 3 no matter what, but the column reference will be updated based on the new cell location. Press F4 again to go to the third option, the absolute column reference, which is having the $sign in front of the letter I. It means that the column reference will remain as I no matter what, but the role reference will be updated based on the new cell location. Finally, press F4 again to go to the last option, the relative reference on both role and column, which is no $signs in both column and role. Again, both the column and role reference will be updated based on the new location. Just to mention that instead of pressing F4 button repeatedly to land in your choice of option, you can also type the $sign directly in front of the role and column reference when you are in the edit mode. Now let's see it with the real example. Let's say we change back the references of the first argument to absolute reference. When you copy a formula to a new cell, something interesting happens. You can notice that the reference of the second argument adjusts automatically based on the new location, while the reference of the first argument stays exactly the same. That's the difference between the absolute references and relative references. Now let's change all the references to absolute references. Enter the edit mode, go to the second argument, and press F4 to change both A1 and G9 to absolute references. Press Enter to confirm the changes and copy the formula to the new location. You can already see that the same result appears in the new location. Enter the edit mode, and you can now see that even after copying to the new location, all the cell references remain unchanged. This tip is especially helpful when you're copying VLOOKUP formulas around your spreadsheet. By using absolute references, you can lock down the lookup table and other key arguments, ensuring they stay the same no matter where you paste the formula. This lets you easily focus your update on a specific value that you want without worrying about the rest of the formula changing unexpectedly. Okay, now let's move on to another best practice. Best practice 2, getting the dataset ready for future growth. The first option, selecting the entire column. In the previous video, we selected a specific area of the spreadsheet for the data set. However, this approach can become problematic when the data grows over time, which is a very common scenario. As you can see here, every time you add new entries, you need to go back to the formula and adjust the selected area to include them. This process can be quite time-consuming and prone to errors. To solve this issue, the first thing to do is to separate the data into different sheets. As you can see here, I've done exactly that. In the next step, we'll update the formula to consider the entire data column instead of a specific range. To do this, we can simply edit the formula and remove the specific row reference from the dataset arguments. As you can see here, I'm entering edit mode and deleting the role reference. You can see that the highlighted areas have now changed from a specific areas to the entire column instead. This is a fantastic improvement because it means you won't need to constantly update your formulas as your dataset grows. Even if you add new entries to the bottom of the column, they'll automatically be included in your existing dataset specified in the formula. Now, let's turn to another best practice that offers an alternative approach to what we just discussed. Best practice 3, getting the dataset ready for future growth. The second option, using the insert table function. This is particularly useful if you can't separate the different data set into different spreadsheets, like what I have just done. To do this, first you have to select the entire data set like what I am doing right now. Then you have to go to the Insert tab in the toolbar and click on Table. If the highlighted data set contains headers, make sure you check this box, My table has headers, and click OK. You are all set. Now you'll notice that the formatting of the highlighted area has changed. Now you can name this table for easy reference. Let's use the name customer. If you go to the formula, you can see that there is no change to the formula itself. Now let's see what will happen when a new record is added to the existing data set. Let's imagine the data record at the bottom as a new entry we want to add to our existing data set. To do this, we'll simply copy the new record and paste it right below the last row of the existing data set. The new row has the same format as the entire data set. Go back to the VLOOKUP formula. You can see that the formula has now updated to include the added row. As you continue adding new rows to the data set, the formula will also be automatically updated to include the latest data row. This is another best practice to keep in mind when setting up your VLOOKUP formula. This way, you won't need to constantly revisit and adjust the formula as your data set expands. Best practice 4, using a unique identifier as the search key. What is a unique identifier? In simple terms, a unique identifier is a value that makes each record in your data set distinct from all the others. This distinct value is what allows VLOOKUP to pinpoint exactly what you're searching for. In our example, we're using the customer ID as the search key. Why? Take a look at our data set. You'll see that each record has a unique customer ID. This makes the customer ID a perfect candidate for VLOOKUP because it guarantees a unique match. Now, let's see what happens if we don't use a unique identifier as our search key. Imagine you want to use the contact person's name, like John Smith. Take a closer look at our data set. You'll notice John Smith appears twice for both Artisan Bakehouse and Sugar Rush Sweets. Now, let's say you enter John Smith and expect VLOOKUP to return the phone number for the specific John Smith who works at Sugar Rush Sweets. The problem is, VLOOKUP searches from top to bottom in your data table. Once it finds a match for John Smith, it stops searching and returns the phone number of the John Smith in the Artisan Bakehouse instead of the John Smith who works at the Sugar Rush Sweets. To illustrate this further, imagine the contact person for rolling pin is also named John Smith. Now, if you look at the phone number, VLOOKUP has returned the phone number of the rolling pin because this is the first John Smith that VLOOKUP find in the data set. Remember, the key to using VLOOKUP effectively is to choose a unique identifier as your search key. This means avoiding fields that might have the same value for multiple records. Why? Because a unique identifier allows Excel finds the exact record you're looking for. If you don't have a single field that acts as a unique identifier, consider combining several fields into a new search key. This can help reduce the chance of duplicate values for different records, making your VLOOKUP search key more reliable. Special trick: working with data downloaded from database. One challenge you might face when working with datasets downloaded from databases is that all the numerical values are stored as text. This might seem fine at first since they look the same to us, but it can cause big problems when you use the VLOOKUP function. Using the first product ID as an example, it is displayed as '0001, even though we understand it's simply 1, like the 1 here. This is because Excel stores it as text-formatted number, not simply an actual number. And that's the problem as VLOOKUP treats them as entirely different things. This is why you see the VLOOKUP formula returning an error. It can't find the search key in the dataset because Excel treats the search key as actual number, while the numbers in the dataset as text. There are 2 ways to fix this text as numbers issue. The most intuitive, but not ideal, solution is to enter the actual value following the text format. This means adding an apostrophe at the beginning and typing all the zeros. While it works, it's not our usual way of entering data and can be cumbersome. Another way to handle this is to convert the text formatted values in the dataset to actual numbers. We can achieve this using a handy Excel function, text to column. First, we select the entire column in the dataset that we want to convert. Then you go to the Data tab in the toolbar and then select the text to column function. Choose delimited and then click Next. You can leave all the boxes unchecked and then click Next. And then you can choose General. Now look at how the text formatted values change and also the change on the VLOOKUP formula when you click the Finish button. Great! Now you see all the text formatted values are converted back to numbers and the VLOOKUP function works again with the correct output. This is because the VLOOKUP function can now match the search key with the value inside the dataset. This means you can simply use the actual numbers as your search key, making things much easier and more intuitive. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up to let me know you want more content like this. Please let me know in the comments section if you're interested in learning any particular function about Excel. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button to join the community and be notified whenever I upload a new video. Goodbye for now and see you in the next video.